Hi, I'm Trent Ellis, Underwater Director of Photography. Today I'm building and prepping the Gates Deep Komodo X housing, the RED Komodo X camera, and the Canon L-Series RF 15-35 lens. This housing can accommodate several monitors, but today we're going to be using the Small HD Ultra 5. I'm going to get started by opening the housing, pulling out the base plate, and building the camera. To open the housing, open the top and side locking latches. Ideally, the side latches are opened at the same time. Slide the two halves of the housing apart. Release the lock arm and slide the camera tray away. Before connecting the camera to the camera tray, first remove the LCD shell. This will allow access for cable management while installing the camera. To install the camera, first start by flipping the camera over. Ensure the cables on the tray are out of the way. Flip the tray over and align the thumb screw with the bottom of the camera. Firmly finger tighten, but don't use any tools to over tighten. Next, connect the power cable and the EXT cable to the back of the camera. Now connect the LCD SDI and power cable. With the front half of the housing, slide the camera and the tray onto the dovetail. Now re-engage the lock arm. It's really important that the camera power is in the on position. Grab your V-mount battery and install it on the side of the camera plate. There are several batteries that are compatible with this housing, and I'll have a list linked below. Grab the rear shell of the housing and connect the GCC cable to the camera plate. This connects the Gates Command Control module, which I'll go into detail about later. Reach through and grab the SDI and power cables for the LCD. While routing these cables, close the rear shell and the front of the housing together. Close the side and then top locking latches. Next, we'll install the Small HD monitor. I'll have a link below to all of the compatible monitors for this housing. Connect the SDI and the power cables to the bottom of the housing. Now carefully route the cables and place the monitor into the back of the housing. When prepping, before I close the LCD shell, I like to power on the camera and the monitor to make sure there are no problems. Some monitors require touchscreen navigation for setup. Here's a power button for the monitor in case it doesn't automatically turn on. Now that this monitor is prepped, we can close the monitor shell. To ensure that the O-ring seats well, tighten the screws in a star pattern. To install the lens, start by removing the port if there is one. This step isn't always necessary, but I'm going to remove the port base so that I have more room for the lens and gear installation. This housing is designed to support any DSLR or mirrorless lens, as well as compact cinema lenses with 0.8 MOD teeth. With this lens, I'm using the Gates Flex Gears. Now mount the lens onto the camera, and make sure the EF mount is in the locked position. Grab the two small Allen keys in the kit, as well as two gears and two drive rods that look like they're about the right length to reach the zoom and the focus. Move the lens gear drive couplers away from the lens. This will make room for the installation of the drive rods and lens gear drives. The drive shafts have a flat spot on one end. Insert this end into the coupler. Once inserted, tighten the screw. Repeat this process for the second drive shaft. Ensure that the drive shaft is long enough to reach the gear you are targeting. Now grab your lens gear drives. Insert one onto each drive shaft and align it with the corresponding gear that you would like to control. Once aligned, tighten the screw. Rotate the coupler to mate the gears. Once tightened, test functionality of the gear. First, work with the lens gear closest to the camera body. Then move down. One of the benefits of working with this lens gearing system is that you can accommodate virtually any DSLR or compact cinema lens. With a DSLR zoom lens like this, you'll have functionality over focus and zoom with the knobs on the right side of the housing. My personal preference is to have focus on the top, which is a little bit easier to grab from the grips on the side of the housing. And that's usually what I need to control the most during any scene I'm filming underwater. On the left side of the housing, you have the GCC, where you can control your iris, and a number of hotkeys and assignable buttons. Now that the lens and gearing is all installed, let's put the port base back on the housing. Again, I'm tightening in a star pattern. With this kit, I have a full set of 4 stacking port rings. This gives me a lot of options, but if I needed to accommodate a longer lens, I can get another set. Depending on the lens, you have a lot of options as far as length goes to the port from the housing. In this case, I'm going to use a really simple rule of thumb and measure the distance from the housing to the end of the lens and just try to get to that distance. There's also a reference chart on the Gates website that you can take a look at. Grease each O-ring before installing each port ring. This will ensure a nice clean seal as well as easier installation and disassembly. Align the locking pin at the top of the housing, which will spin around and lock on the right side. Once again, grease the O-ring. The second ring, the locking pin will start at the bottom and will rotate clockwise, locking into place. Now that the port extension rings are where I want them to be, I'll prep the dome. Firmly press the dome port against the housing. Rotate 90 degrees or until the dome stops rotating. Now we'll use the seal check system to ensure that there are no leaks in the housing. Connect the hand pump to the hose and the hose to the back of the housing. Once connected, pump about 40 or 50 times. Disconnect the hose. And connect the vacuum gauge. You should be looking for about 100 millibar, give or take. Make sure the number on the screen isn't dropping. What I typically do is disconnect this and check again in 5 or 10 minutes, or right before I get in the water. This seal looks good. Next, we'll power on the camera and go through a few settings. Use the power button in the back of the housing, and the camera will boot up, along with the rear LCD monitor and the GCC Gates Command Control module on the side of the housing. On the top of the housing, you'll have full access and control to the Komodo X display. Go into User Settings, User Buttons, and here you can set which assignables will be on the GCC on the side of the camera. There are 4 assignables. You'll also have iris control, as well as frame rate, shutter, and ISO control. These controls are at your fingertips when holding onto the left grip. The Gates Command Control module is fully customizable. I will link instructions that show a step-by-step process to set up a custom configuration. On the right side of the housing, you'll have a large red record trigger. Now that the housing is built, all that's left to do is get it in the water and trim it out with buoyancy blocks and housing weights. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.